Good morning, everybody. Today we are going through the severity requirement for Social Security disability. So, for those of you trying to understand what it means to be disabled, disability has a 5-step process. As with any type of law, especially administrative law in the United States, it's often very complicated. So there's a 5-step process of determining whether or not you're disabled. So the first thing is are you still working? It's called substantial gainful activity. And I'm not even going to get into step 1, but if you look on the internet, there's certain levels that you cannot earn in a gross amount of pay each month, or you will be considered not disabled. So for those of you that are needing to work and file for disability, and the fact that you can't work full time, but you can work a couple hours a week. Number one, because you absolutely have to. Just make sure that you keep it under a certain amount of gross income each month. And right now, if you're qualifying for SSDI, that's $1130 a month, and then for SSI applicants with not enough work credits to qualify for SSDI, be $733 a month. Anything above those amounts, gross amounts, you're looking at being given what's called a technical denial. And that's for basically working too much and having to file for disability. So second step is your condition severe? Well, we're going to get right back on this, but severity issue for Social Security purposes is actually really important. And Social Security Administration, the Disability Determination Service, which is the state agency that reviews your file and puts your medical records together, takes the severity requirement really serious as well. The third is whether or not your disability meets what's called a medical listing. And with the medical listing, they are very complicated definitions. Out of 20 or 30 cases that I'll do, one can usually qualify. Maybe not even that. Maybe even more than that. 1 out of 50. One will automatically just qualify and be done. I can recall I usually have about 2 or 3 a year, and that's about it. And then if you're filing for a mental disorder, bipolar, ADHD, things like that, you want to argue that your condition meets a medical listing because they're easier to meet is on the medical side because things are just not as concrete on mental condition rather than a physical condition. But that's for a later date as well. Step 4 is that you can't return back to work that you've done in the past, especially that over the last 15 years. If the Social Security Administration feels that you are capable of returning back to work that you've done in the past, well, you know what, then it's very likely you're going to be denied. The 5th step is that you can't do some other type of work. So this is actually really important. And understanding what it means to be disabled. So being disabled does not mean that having a severe condition, a severe impairment, does not mean you're disabled. What it means is that even despite your condition or taking into consideration your condition, there are no other jobs that you're capable of doing. There are no jobs that you'd be capable of doing. And that's what it really means to be disabled. Okay, there's other factors that come into it: your age, your education, transferable work skills, things of that nature as well. That also is taken into consideration along with your impairments or your conditions. Okay, your mental or physical conditions. Okay, so if you got anything out of that, just remember this is a 5-step process in which you go through to be found disabled. So the 5-step process is adhered to from the initial claim, when you file your claim, all the way through the appeals council. If you had to go to federal court, if you read federal court holdings, which none of you do, I understand, Oftentimes the judges go through a sequential process itself, thinking it through and applying your medical evidence to these rules and coming out on the other end whether or not they believe you're disabled as well. So everybody that's looking at your case goes through it, okay? Now let's return back to the severity issue. Okay, in step 2, your condition has to be severe. So let me just quickly explain what severity means. Severity means that it has to really impact your ability to do basic work activities, okay? So your condition is going to have to interfere and really in a way greatly interfere with your ability to sit, stand, walk, talk, sit down for 6 out of 8 hours a day, walk and stand for 2 hours a day, frequently climb stairs or occasionally climb stairs. It needs to interfere with your ability to bend. Really crawling doesn't really interfere, but your ability to crawl, especially to reach your arms out in front of you, reach your hands up above you, because if you think about it, you have to do that in almost any job. Okay, so those are the physical impairments that your condition has to severely interfere with. Okay, what about mental? Well, in order for your mental condition to be severe, it has to interrupt your ability to concentrate for extended period of time. It has to keep you from being able to understand and follow even simple instructions. If you're bipolar, it needs to greatly interfere with your ability to interact with the public or interact with coworkers or interact with your supervisor. Okay, so those are the kinds of things. Also, too, if you're suffering from depression, then you have to go through periods of what's called decompensation. And what decompensation means is that you're just too depressed to get out of the house, and it needs to go on for a week or two even. A lot of times, the depression itself is judged by its severity as whether or not there was a suicide attempt, things like that. So getting back to the severity issue, your condition has to be severe. Well, it has to be severe because it needs to greatly interfere with basic work activities, okay? In order to meet step 2, that's what it's got to be doing. Now, a lot of times when people file, Social Security deems their claim to be their conditions and impairments to only be moderate. They moderately interfere with their condition. You know, things like that would be, well, they can't sit for 6 out of 8 hours a day, but they can sit for 4. And they can alternate standing and sitting as needed. Well, you know, there's lots of jobs out there that you can sit and stand as needed. Once before, at one point, Social Security was acknowledging that a job in which you had to a job that would accommodate sitting and standing at will was not readily available for people to do in the national economy. And what has basically happened is they've recognized now that there's about 70 some odd jobs in the national economy where somebody could be able to or would be allowed to stand and sit at their own leisure, basically. Okay, so you've got to really look at your conditions. Are your conditions really severe? That's going to be, like I said, that's really step 1 in the disability process, even though it's step 2. And what I mean is if you're not working, then that is just a quick, immediate step that Social Security checks and moves on. Then they really get down to the nitty-gritty on whether or not your condition is severe. If it isn't severe, then your case is going to stop at step 2. It's going to be denied. Okay. In regards to the severity issue, there's also something that corresponds with it, goes along with it, and that is the duration issue. Okay, so not only does your condition have to be severe, it has to also pass the duration issue. It has to be severe for a certain amount of time. And what the rules say is that you've got to expect to have this severe condition for at least 12 months or more. So there's got to be at least an expectation that you're going to be severely impacted. Your basic work activity is going to be severely impacted for 12 months or more. Or, and this is a big or, people think, well, I'm not going to die from my condition that I know of, so they're not listening carefully enough. So it's a big or. And for the duration requirement, it's expected to last, or it already has lasted, for 12 months. The or is, or it's likely to lead to your death. So claimants that I have that have stage 4 cancer, for example, they're going to meet the duration requirement along with the severity requirement itself as well. The duration requirement is of course, that they've had this cancer, or they've been battling this cancer for a year or more, and that satisfies it. And it also satisfies it that they're likely to die from it, and that would be a truthful statement. Okay. So in deciding whether or not you believe you're disabled, look really closely at step 2. Go through step 1 through 5. Evaluate it. We'll talk more about each step as we move along. But step 2 is really important. Just step back and ask yourself, are you really disabled? Is your condition likely to last for 12 months or more? That's to the heart of the issue. Does it interrupt your ability to sit, stand, walk, drive a car, talk, listen, get along with other people, follow simple instructions? Okay, those are the things that interfere with those basic physical and mental work activities. See you guys next week.